Welcome to the Invested Teacher Podcast with Kyle Pierce, Matt Bigley, and John Orr.
Get ready to be top folks as we share our successes and failures encountered during our real-life lessons, learning how to build generational wealth from the ground up.
Welcome, invested students, to another episode of the Invested Teacher Podcast. Well, it's that time of year. It's either the doomsday clock is ticking for teachers who are returning in September, or maybe there's some excitement out there. I think my kids are actually excited to go back to school. My wife is a secondary teacher, and the anxiety is definitely reaching its zenith at the moment. So we have a really interesting episode today where we're going to talk a little bit about the reflections from John and Kyle on their recent semester off, and what they thought about what they would end up doing with their time during their semester, what they didn't do, what many teachers and others who can take time off do, and some of the just reflections on that. And we're going to pivot to talking about how you, if you are a teacher returning in September, feeling this anxiety and wondering about your wealth building journey and where you might take it next, we're going to talk about some things you might do that you haven't done that we think you should think about doing next.
Yeah, this is a great topic, and especially timely, like you said, Matt. Back to school time for any educator family, or any family with kids.
Any family with kids, right? Because it's like a fresh start.
Well,
right?
I think families with kids who don't aren't educators are like, oh my gosh, the kids are going back. It's like that commercial.
You can stop having two jobs,
the
right?
wonderful time of the year
job, right? And then the job of babysitting the kids at home.
Running the day camp.
But Matt's right. Every educator out there who, as soon as August hits, you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's back to school time soon. It's back to school time soon. It's like the longest Sunday night ever. And then when actually like the week before comes, or when the actual Sunday night comes, it's oh my gosh, here we go. We're back at it. We're back in the classroom. There's no more, holiday time. And so, like it's kind of an anxious time. And it often makes me think about like other anxious times you get about, where you are on your journey. And specifically, we talk about building our wealth here. And what are we doing to, pad our wealth? And I think, Matt, when I think about going back to school and picking up where we had left off from, previous semester we worked, it brings up for me the immediate thought of what are my long-term goals. And I think that's really what we get at. And I think that's sometimes thinking about that and kind of coming to clarity around your long-term goals could make that anxiety go away, or maybe builds it up a little bit more. It depends on where your head's at and on what your goal is and what you're, where you are on achieving those goals. But I think in this episode, I really want to talk about goal setting and thinking about what have we done up to this point to achieve those goals, because if the new year, this like you said, Matt, before we hit record, is that our whole country, almost the whole world, revolves around the school year instead of like the actual calendar year, a lot of times because of families with kids. And so it's like the beginning, it's like fresh start. It's like, this is maybe where our resolutions come from, is this is another fresh start for us to kind of think about our goals. And if we aren't clear on where we want to, what goals we want to achieve, especially around our personal finances, especially around our, work goals and our life goals, or like, what do we want our lives to look like? I know I'm talking big picture right now, but that helps me, I think, feel less anxious about going back to school because of that clarity that you have. So let's talk clarity. Let's talk goals here today, guys.
I love it. And, this is really interesting because, we've got an interesting scenario here. Of course, everyone who's been listening to the podcast knows that we were all teachers. You're forever a teacher, by the way. So we're all teachers, but in different stages And it's really interesting because regardless of the industry that you're in, ultimately the phases that we're in, you could be in these phases in these other careers. So it's really interesting that we can unpack this and how everyone's feeling and where they are, and really connecting it to that longer plan or that long range plan. Like you had said, John, is really important. If you're listening to Invested Teacher, clearly you are trying to get your wealth journey going, or you're in your wealth journey, but ultimately you're trying to set up for something, right? Like the easy answer there is you're trying to set up to make sure that you have enough money to support yourself, support your family, and, you know, and hopefully live a good life. Like that in general, we know everyone's on page or on track for. But ultimately beyond that, once the money, there is enough to make sure that you have enough food on the table, that you can cover your expenses, you're probably thinking about like lifestyle. And by lifestyle, I mean making sure that you live the most joyous life you possibly can, right? Like that's why we're doing this. We want to make sure that we can live the best life we can. We've only got one of these things. And, you know, I'll start with kind of where my head's at, because, you know, John is actually going back to the classroom. We're recording this a week ahead of school. This is going live the day after the first day of school here in Canada or in Ontario. Obviously in the US, southern states, you friends have already been back since the beginning of August. But wherever you are, you can relate to this feeling. So John's going to be going back, and you know, he's in the classroom. However, I'm going to stay off. And it's interesting because when we did this journey, John and I both took leave of absences from our employers at the same time. And interestingly enough, it was John that was more sort of like nudging towards this idea. And I was we've talked about it, right? My primal question is, am I secure, right? Do I have enough you know, and that was a concern of mine at the time. And I would argue I'm the type of person that I loved my job, and I still do love that job, but I'm a heads down type of worker. It's like when I get to business, I just get to business and I go, and I don't stop. Like I barely come up for air. That's just who I am. So I was happy. Like, and I'm like, but the thing is that I'm happier that I've been able to be here for my family in a different way. And the crazy part is that through this process, even though I've only been off for this past, we'll call it a semester or, you know, 6 months, doing these other things, focusing on my family and focusing on other things that I've always been passionate about and learning about those things, I'm telling you, like, I am even happier than I was when I was in that position. And most people would have looked at me and said like, oh yeah, like Kyle's like the math consultant, like at the board. It's like, he's thinking math nonstop. Like he's working hard. He never stops. And I'm actually happier, not because I was not happy there, but it's like, I'm in this place now where it's almost like John and I have, I don't want to say completely switched, you know, but you're going back. And here I am.
I think
and I'm like, no, I'm loving my life too much here, especially the ability and how much energy I've been able to commit to my family that I was not able to commit when my head was down doing work I loved. But the problem is that my other pillars, one being my family, actually, in my opinion, suffered. And that to me was like, it's like an epiphany that I've had, and I didn't realize I was going to have it through this process.
Yeah, I think what was holding you back, you know, when guys, I don't know if I'm sure you remember, because we chatted, we were together, we were at a conference and we were chatting about this move, right? Of like, hey, I think we can do this, right? Like, I think we can take this move. And you could see Kyle's like hesitation, his worry, his scary. He's like, I don't know. And I remember thinking and saying, I don't know if Kyle's going to make that application to have that leave of absence. It's like and I think Kyle, was holding you back is that worry of the unknown, of that safety of thinking about, I don't know what my life would look like, you know, if I'm not busy doing these things, you know. And I think we just didn't have a clear picture of like what our work would look like. And
but I'm also
like, that part might be scary, you know?
You know what I mean? Like, I'm also a yes man. And like, I think another that was primary, but secondary, it was like, I'm like, but I'm in this role, like I'm in a leadership role. And I'm like, I didn't want to like abandon that role. Like you start to think like how
Yeah.
important you
Your
think
identity
you
was there.
are.
Your
My
identity was there.
identity was there. But then also it's like, you start to tell yourself stories like, how's it going to work without me there? Like, I don't want to put them in that position. But meanwhile, it's like I was doing that to my own family. Like I was sacrificing here in order to make sure everybody over there was okay. And the reality is hey, guess what? That school board, they're still in operation today, guys. And I'm not there. You know what I mean? There is no fire and everyone's going to be okay. And like the kids are still going to learn math. And I think I needed that wake up call. So I'll thank both of you, because that 4-hour car trip, like we were chatting about it. I remember I was like getting hot, like opening up the windows, and you guys were like, laying it on heavy, like you should do this. This is going to be a massive growth opportunity for you. And we got into that conversation. I don't know, Matt, if you remember it, maybe you can share some of your recollections, but it was like, I needed you guys to help me think about what's the worst that can happen. And that was kind of when I was like, I'm going to do it. And like in that car ride, that's when we made that decision. It was like, rip the Band-Aid off. And honestly, I've learned so much about myself and my family and what matters to me. And I think that's kind of why we wanted to dig into this conversation today, is like, I thought I knew who I was, but ultimately I didn't know anything about who I was. I just knew who I was at the time, which is a really interesting piece.
It's really deep, Kyle. And I think you're touching on things that we all think about. And I think for all three of us, we've always talked about what passionate educators we are, and this is, I officially resigned in June, effective August 31st. So while I've been off of teaching for a couple of years, you guys know we talked about it ad nauseum. You guys were so patient with me, and it was a huge decision. I enjoyed the work I did, just as you guys enjoy the work you do and did in the classroom as well. And so it wasn't a matter of that. But I love that you've touched on just this time freedom, and that's really what we talked about in that car ride. It was really two things. It was that time freedom. Ironically, all three of us, having had time off from teaching, have probably worked more hours and worked harder in our entrepreneurial ventures, possibly than we even did as teachers, because the incentive is different. But the second thing you talked about was, that financial security. And at first, it was a fear of whether or not you'd have it. And suffice to say that you've decided to take another semester off. So, clearly you achieved that financial security as well. And I wonder, in kind of unpacking that for our listeners, you and John already had a, really healthy, really interesting entrepreneurial side hustle that you went into full time over the past semester. But, in terms of our audience out there thinking about the same worries about like, okay, I'm going to take a semester off. Lots of people do 2/3s or 4/5s, those deferred leaves, and they go and travel. I love that you guys took time off, and maybe you did a little bit of traveling in there, but it was about working. So I'm curious from the two of you guys, kind of unpacking, how did you get to that point where you were either willing to take the jump into entrepreneurship, even temporarily, knowing you could return to work? But how did that financial security piece work for you? Because that's the scariest part for all of us, is how do we pay the bills? Where's the mortgage going to come from? What happens if I'm a complete and utter failure? That goes through all of our heads all the time. Maybe talk us through that over the last semester in reflecting on maybe what you thought it was going to look like and what it has looked like in hindsight.
Yeah, good question, because I think that, talking about our experiences can help, the listener who's listening right now think about what steps they might need to take to move down that path, and what kind of remove the risk for us. And I think, one of our goals, and I guess one of my goals, has always been to, I think what most families think about for themselves is I always want to provide that stability for my family. So that safety aspect is there for me too. And ensuring that we have that stable cash flow that comes in is really important. And you can't take that, like I would never take that leap to kind of go down that route without that stability. Like I think we just, I'm reminded of that chat we had with Ryan Malcolm a couple episodes ago, Kyle, where Ryan didn't have that. Ryan was always like, I'm going to just take the leap and see what happens. And then I'm going to go down wherever I go. Whereas like, and it led him to some great things, great opportunities for him, and, and great investment opportunities for him, and a great career as well. And I think that was probably our biggest stumbling block to making the step to being like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and not a teacher, because my teacher job is very secure. I know I can provide for my family. And I think one of the greatest things that I definitely have to give you credit, Kyle, is when we started this side hustle. So the side hustle part of like building up our business on the other side of our Make Math Moments business. And that part allowed us to have some flexibility in that. And I think that's that part of like thinking about taking, you've got certain revenue. And I think, Kyle, you pushed me a long time ago to start thinking about building your wealth from the side hustle, instead of going like, I'm just going to replace my income with my side hustle. We talked about that a few episodes ago too, about the wealthy people add to their income, and people who aren't wealthy are just replacing income. And I had that mindset that, hey, if we go down this path with our side hustle, maybe there's a point where I can swap out my teacher's salary with that, as long as that salary is also sustainable. Whereas when we first started, you convinced me to think more about the other side, is like, let's add to it instead of swap it. And when we added to it, we actually didn't take any money from the business. The business grew, right? Like we kept every dollar inside that business. Now, I know that was a lot of work on our end, because we're working really 2 jobs at the same time. We're going to school every day. We're teaching our students, you're working with your district and providing the support they need. We're coming home. We're still in the same land. So we're still helping districts outside of our time, but we're doing all that on our own time. And that was our hobby. We loved doing that work. We still love doing that work. But I think our biggest thing, that to address Matt's question of like what allowed us to take that step, is first having like that built up equity in the business to go like, hey, you know what? We've never taken $1 here, and we've got all of this that we could say, you know what? We could pay ourselves. Like, let's invest in ourselves for a semester, because that's the way we said it, right? Like what, instead of hiring someone to keep that part going, like we were thinking about hiring a salesperson, and we're like, we could pay them that, but we're like, why don't we double down on ourselves for 1 semester and see if that makes a difference? And that was a rationalization. Like I felt like that rationalized it, and we had the capital to pay ourselves, so that we knew by the end of the semester we could make that part work. Our stability is in check. Our families are okay with it. But I think it worked wonders for you. Like I had the same feeling as like that benefit of working on things you really are excited, like projects you really are excited to work on, is amazing. Like it's not something, I think I took it for granted, that it was like, this is something that we can do long term. And it was really because I think we were really smart from the get-go of where that kind of that safety net was going to come from.
I love it. It's interesting too, because I'm happy you said that. I wasn't going to go down that rabbit hole, but I think, just to kind of call it out, especially for our listeners, because we do receive, and we encourage you at the end of every episode, like reach out to us. We love chatting with our listeners and helping you with your next step, whatever that might be. And we've had, I would say, like the vast majority of calls we get on is people who are looking to find a way to potentially either retire early or leave their career early, whatever it might be, but it's like they're at the very beginning of that journey. So like reiterating that stage and making sure that you're adding to your income for a significant period of time before you decide to make that switch, unless like exactly what it is you want to do and you're passionate about, rock and roll. but just making sure that, you're prepared for it, I think is really important. And, when I go back to like thinking about this past half a year off, and the fact that I'm staying off for the next half of the year, and just thinking about where my mind was, like when I came off, and you guys helped me with this and overcoming this hurdle of my own, I was like, okay, I need to, in my mind, I was like, I want to be a better father, a better husband. I want to be a better like person overall. Like I wanted to learn something. And I was like, if we can, and I remember saying this to you guys, I was like, if we can learn something about ourselves and know like something that we didn't know, and more personally for me, that was my personal goal. I'm like, then this will have been worth it. And in my mind, I thought I was going back just like John is, this coming week. Like I thought I was the guy that was going to be like, hey guys, great. Appreciate that you guys pushed me to try this. And I learned X, Y, and Z, and that's great. But I'm just going to go back because again, I didn't think I needed more time because I was happy in the work I was doing, right? Like I was supporting a district. Like we do a lot of that support, and we have been doing that through Math Moments as well. And we loved doing that work. So I was like, why am I doing this? I like doing what I'm doing. I love doing what I'm doing. And I was like, I get to do more of that. Great. But what I recognized through this was just the ability to like send those kids off to school in the morning. And like my wife's a teacher. It's ironic because like it's like our entire families were all education families, right? So John's wife being
That's
ECE,
true. Yes.
Matt's wife being a high school teacher, my wife being a grade 3 teacher. And so it's like we still are very closely connected, whether we're off, whether you're permanently off like Matt, or whether you're going back like John is. It's like we're very connected in that world. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what I realized through this process was that maybe just because I was enjoying what I was doing doesn't necessarily mean that it was the best fit for me, which I think is really interesting. And there might be someone listening who has the same thought, but I'm going to guess that most people are listening because maybe they want something different. That's what we're getting from those who do reach out to us. They're like, we want something different. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what I think it comes back to is what we talked about at the top of the episode, which is, what is your goal? Like, what do you want over the longer term? It's one thing for me to go and enjoy the work I'm doing day in and day out, but there's going to be a day where you come up for air. If you're like me, you're going to come up for air, and I'm going to come up for air and go, was that the best opportunity for me? Like, was that the best way that I use this limited time that we have on this planet? Or is there something else? And ultimately, what I've recognized over this period of time is that I don't want there to be any what ifs in my life, And like, if you go through a career like I was doing it, even though I was happy doing it, after 30 years, there would have been so many what ifs. Like, what if I did this? What if I did that? And like right now, I'm kind of in this mode of like, I wonder who I actually am as an employee, or as a business person, or as an investor, or as a husband, or as a father, whatever it might be. It's like, I feel that this process has helped me to understand myself in ways that I had no clue about. And I think ultimately, every person out there, whether you choose to do it like we're doing, or whether you choose to do it a different way, ultimately, I'm going to guess that we all have a little bit of soul searching to figure out, like, what is it that I really want here? Why am I listening to this podcast right now? In service of what? And what sort of work do you need to do in order to figure it out so that you can get yourself there and you don't have any what ifs at the end of your career?
Kyle, you've touched on so many, I think, deep and reflective topics there. It's, you've had a profound semester off in so many ways, it sounds like. And I think it's, it's beautiful to hear that, where you started and where you ended up were two entirely different places, and we're so fortunate as educators to have the opportunity to be able to have a semester off and to take some time with the security of our jobs. And it's the same road I took. I took a semester off, and then another, and then a whole year, and what a privilege to be able to do that and to have that safety net behind us. I think for so many of our listeners, like teachers, educators don't often see themselves as entrepreneurs, and I was with a client last night who was telling me about his journey from being a nurse to a police officer. And I said, oh my God, you were a nurse and you decided to leave that. He talked about the challenges during COVID and just how tiring it was. And I said, but you chose to go into policing. That's also a really, really tough job. So I think as speaking to our audience of educators and, maybe nurses and police officers out there, I thought that was a really interesting career switch. A lot of educators, when they're looking for something new, it's like they naturally try to go into administration or I visited with, an old teacher friend over the summer who, wanted to talk about how to build for his retirement. And he was getting some more AQ courses so he could teach different topics. People teach summer school. So there seems to be a disconnect with teachers not really seeing themselves as entrepreneurs. And maybe we could have some suggestions or kind of talk a little bit about, how you start now, because the neat thing about being an entrepreneur, and this is counter to everything we've sort of believed as teachers, is like you can do it forever, and as teachers, like we get to retire early. I've been reading a ton. There's been a lot in the Globe and Mail about kind of the emptiness of retirement and how the loss of purpose and direction and the reason to get up every day. And maybe that's a topic for another episode. But what's fascinating to me about being an entrepreneur and making this mid-career switch is that I plan on doing it forever. I don't have a retirement date. My November 2035 that I was locked into, after my 17 years of teaching, that's gone. And that's gone because it's actually been empowering, the time freedom Kyle talked about, the financial security. It's been life-changing. This coming year, my wife's going to work one semester and my entrepreneurship is going to allow her to have the other semester off. Like those are the things that, Kyle, you talked about, like literally living your very best life during the years when we can enjoy it most.
Well, isn't it wonderful that you, like, I feel like that's a wonderful feeling that you said, because I have the exact same feeling, Matt, about where my goals are set for moving forward. And it just feels wonderful to say, like, I'm going to do this, like a job for the rest of my life. And it doesn't scare the shit out of you. It's like, cause I think, like when you start to become a teacher, or maybe you're in your pension job and you're like, well, I'm going to do this, but I never once said like, I'm going to do this forever. I'm going to teach, I'm going to be like, I'm going to be 80 or I'm going to be 75 and I'm still going to be in the classroom. Like,
some people do it though,
some people do it, but I've never had that thought. And I think it was always like, I can see myself doing this. I like going to school. I like kids. I like helping with, do these, lessons this way. And I enjoy it. I still enjoy it. But it's all the goal has always been to like, I think what every teacher has is like, here's your retirement date, like you just said, but it just feels so amazing to say like, I'm going to work on these 3 projects forever. I'm going to be we're going to be helping, districts in the math world become better districts. I can see myself continuing to do that past the date I set for retirement. And it's exciting to think about that. We're going to help people in investment space, in mortgage space, in realtor space. We're going to be doing that. I can see myself doing that forever. And it's exciting, right? It's like, I can see that world. I can see that goal of just like, it's going to be continuing to work. And it's also, it frees you up to go like, well, what are we going to do after that retirement date? If I was a teacher, it's like, am I going to travel? Because we said that, but I can travel this way as well, right? It's like, I can travel and continually provide for the lifestyle I want, doing these other things. Like, it's just completely freeing to think about past retirement. It's like, almost like it's lifted this, like this, I don't want to say pressure. It's not pressure, but it's like it lifted something. And it's like, hey, it opened something that says like, I can keep going and it's great and it's okay. And I'm going to have fun and I'm going to enjoy every minute of it because I get to work on these projects that really excite me to work on.
I love it. And, you kind of helped me to even maybe recognize, maybe it already came out and is obvious to everyone that's listening, but it's only becoming apparent to me now, is that I think this past little while has actually saved me a lot of potential soul searching later. And why I'm saying that is because I was such a heads down worker that like I said, some people teach till they're 80. Like that could have been me doing the work I was doing simply because I enjoyed it. And it was like, and it's comfortable, right? Like it's comfortable. You get used to this routine. It's like, it's just what I do. Like every day after Labor Day, I just go in and I just do this and I do head down, and you just do it every year, every year, every year. Whereas if I hit that retirement date and I actually retired, which I know my wife would have been like, no, like we're shutting her down. Like, we're going to go live and do the things that everyone does in retirement. I think that would actually be really hard for someone who is in that mode like me. So what I mean is, it's like for me to go from head down for 30 straight years and not really thinking outside of that world. I think it happens to more people than we recognize, where they like, they show up, it's retirement, they have the party, they do the thing, and then they wake up on that, that Monday morning and they're like, now what do I do? Right. And like, you see so many people where it's almost like they just sort of do what so many other people do, which is like, get up at whatever time. It's like, hey, I didn't wake up to an alarm. So they're like, check, I'm winning in life. Right. Great. Awesome. There's that checklist. Then it's like, then I read the paper. And I always joke, I talk about my parents. Like my parents have this, they travel, they do all kinds of great stuff. They golf, they're very active, but I do like to pick on them a little bit, because I'm always like, my parents, it's like if they have like a doctor's appointment at 3:00, it's like all of Tuesday is booked, because they wake up, they have to read the paper till noon. And then at like noon, they have to like start making lunch. And then after lunch, they have to like clean up the dishes, and then they got to leave for the doctor's appointment. So it's like they are like fully booked for the whole day. And that is like what I don't want for myself. And John, you just kind of articulated, it's like, I want to stay excited about doing the things that keep me motivated, that keep me excited to get up. Like, imagine this, like get up early in the morning. Like we get up early in the morning by choice. We've been quote unquote off for 6 months. And yet we still get up. You, John, in the 5:00 hour, I cheat and I get up at 6:00, but I do it and I pop out of bed and I love doing it. And it's like, I'm even more motivated now in this world to get up than I was, let's say, in the world where I didn't really have a choice as to the time I had to wake up, or, how much time I had to get the kids on the bus and rush out the door. So I don't know, mini epiphany for me. Maybe there's some people out there who are relating, or maybe they're relating to one of you guys. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think the big message here, and what we're hoping to motivate you to do as the listener, as the invested student, is to think about, why are you here right now? And if the answer is something like just to get more money, or just to leave your job, I feel like there's more work to be done. Right? Like there is more work to be done. Like, why are you doing it? What is it that you specifically are looking to achieve? And like, when you start to do that, then your plan starts to become clearer, right? You can start seeing through that haze, and you start envisioning like what's in the background there. And that journey, like, it feels like it's getting closer because it's becoming more clear.
Love that. And I think, my big takeaway from this, and I think, we've encouraged people to do some big thinking. And I think people are also looking for some next steps. And one of that, one of those next steps is really to think about their own, we call it our personal beliefs. What is your goal? What are your big thoughts? We invite you to book a discovery call with us. Like, this doesn't happen overnight. You guys were building this side hustle for a long time. I was a real estate investor, and a house renovator for years before I ever decided to get my real estate license, which was that, first big step in having an entrepreneurial journey that allowed me to leave teaching. And so, we want you to reach out to us so we can have a call. We've had really great discussions with people, and it's been awesome to dig into their lives and their goals, because you need to decide on a focus for your wealth building. And we've got some terrific ideas, be it in real estate, be it in, whole life insurance, and be it in the mortgages. We want to share that with you. We want to hear what your plans are, what your goals are, and then help give you a blueprint to be able to achieve them. And that's going to take some time. And we're excited to go down that journey with you.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly it, Matt. Like, if you reach out to us, we are going to ask you what your goals are. We are going to kind of dig deep. And I think, Kyle, we've learned a lot from a book called The Coaching Habit, which we've a phrase we use all the time in all of our businesses, which is like, how can you, hold off on advice giving a little bit more, and then listen a little bit more and ask questions a little bit more. And really,
Stay
that's
curious
we
just a little bit longer, right?
we've learned so much to continue digging into what people really are after and what your goals are. And so we're going to do that with you. We're going to kind of go down that rabbit hole. And because we're going to dig a little bit with you, you might realize some of the goals, that you didn't know that you were actually after, or what some of the whys for yourself are. And once you have that realization, it does, like what Matt says, it opens the door to having different options and where we could go down with you, so that you are planning your wealth, your wealth journey. And in actuality, you can't really plan that wealth journey, or that wealth building journey, that generational wealth we're really after, unless you do that searching, unless you answer those why questions. Like, what do I really want here? We have to get to the bottom of that, because you could say, I want to have a bunch of money. I want to have like that stability, but why? Like, where's the reason there? We have to answer those questions so that we can find the right pathway to put every dollar you have to work for you, and so that you can build that generational wealth. So we would love for you to reach out and have that conversation, just like Matt said.
I love it. I love it. You can do that at the investedteacher.com website. On that website, on every page, you're going to see a book a call button, and you'll also see opportunities for you to grab some resources. So, sometimes reading books can be helpful. So grab our book list. You'll see that right on our main page. You can click on the books list and do some reading. But ultimately, at the end of the day, thinking through, your personal why. We talk about the personal beliefs all the time, but sometimes, just thinking about what is going to make you happier, or more intentional, or more, I guess, just feeling like you're living your life to the fullest each and every day, not just down the road after this working stage of your life, because, hey, there's only so much time we have here. And let's maximize it. So head on over to investedteacher.com. Of course, if you found some value in this particular episode, we really, really would appreciate it if you would rate and review the show on whatever podcast platform you are on. That is going to help more and more invested teachers. We've had I think it was about a 20% bump in downloads this past week. So keep on sharing, my friends. We really, really appreciate it. And more importantly, more invested students just like you will appreciate it.
All links and resources and the transcript from this episode can be found on our show notes page, which is investedteacher.com/episode 38. That's this episode, investedteacher.com/episode 38. Also, each month we do a giveaway. Sometimes we give away a $50 gift card. Sometimes we give away big items. Sometimes that's your mortgage payment, or a TV, or a few months ago, a Roomba was given away during this promotion. So you can join our VIP club. Head on over to investedteacher.com/VIP club and join that list, and you could be part of our next giveaway.
All right, invested students, class dismissed. A reminder to our audience, this content is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice.